Hamar is in Wimbledon. Hamar, what do you think?
Well, I think he's left the institution, left the country. So it really doesn't make any difference, his approach of coming across and saying, look, this is me, this is my story, this is what I've had to do. He's left. He's left the institution, he's left the country. The only reason he's doing it is because he has to sell the books to make money. And
technically he doesn't, of course, because the advance would have been immense. I very much doubt, even if it becomes the best-selling book in history, that it will actually move into royalty territory. The advance is already in the bank. So if you had enormous issues with people in this country and they had been played out in public and continue to be played out in public, even if you moved to Alpha Centauri, never mind Montecito, even if you died, they would still be writing about the other side of the story, still be portraying you according to their agenda, not your recollections, not your reality. You think if you moved house, suddenly you wouldn't care anymore or it wouldn't matter to you?
Well, it's my family at the end of the day as well. So it's a combination of whether his relationship with his family.
Exactly. So if you'd been appallingly treated in your own mind by your own family and the whole world was watching, you think that by moving house you'd somehow not care anymore?
But then do you think by voicing it in public...
Well, just tell me first, because we look it through the lens of our own experiences. If you've been appallingly treated by your own family and the whole world was reading their side of the story, you think that if you moved house and left the family business, you wouldn't be upset anymore. That's what you came on and said. I don't know whether you realise that. But
no.
The idea that because he's moved to California and stepped back from formal royal duties, he should somehow not care about getting his side of the story out there or not care about dealing with his trauma in the public space where he's lived his entire life is, we both know deep down, ridiculous, right?
Hey there, and a warm welcome to our channel. Here, we celebrate Prince Harry and Meghan, so please subscribe today. James O'Brien took that call, and it ended up becoming a moment of clarity, a moment of fire, a moment where one person's entitlement met the truth head-on. The caller accused Prince Harry of breaching the royal family's privacy by revealing details in his memoir, Spare. She criticized Harry and Meghan for what she called bolting to California after the United Kingdom had apparently invested so much in them. That word, investment, that's where the rot really is. That single word, loaded with colonial arrogance and ownership, is where the truth breaks open. Because let's be clear from the very start, Harry and Meghan Sussex are not stocks in a public portfolio. They are not shares to be traded, nor are they characters in a fantasy written by the British public. They are people, human beings, a couple that decided to say no more and found peace in the face of a relentless storm. When James O'Brien heard that caller go on and on about how Harry should have kept his mouth shut, how he broke some sacred code by speaking out, he didn't let it slide. And thank goodness. Because honestly, someone needed to say it. Prince Harry didn't choose this life. He didn't audition for the role of Spare in a centuries-old institution that treats its members more like mannequins in a display window than actual human beings. He was born into it, shaped by it, and ultimately traumatized by it. And still, somehow, people are shocked when he finally stepped out of line to protect his wife, his children, and himself. From the moment Harry was old enough to walk, his life was catalogued. His grief when Diana died was front-page news. His teenage missteps were global headlines. There was no privacy to betray because he never had any to begin with. So when the British public cries foul over his decision to tell his story, what they're really mourning is the loss of monopoly over that story. Because for once, it wasn't filtered through a palace press officer or twisted by tabloid sensationalism. It came from Harry's own mouth, in his own words. And that, honestly, terrifies people who've grown far too comfortable treating royal lives like soap operas they're entitled to script. When the caller insisted Harry should have shared less, that maybe he could have just disappeared quietly into the California sunset without spilling the royal tea, James O'Brien calmly, surgically, tore that notion apart. He said what needed to be said. If leaving the country doesn't protect you from the headlines, if stepping away from royal duties doesn't stop the British press from stalking your every move, then what choice do you have but to speak? Speaking becomes survival. Telling your story becomes the only act of power left when your silence is weaponized against you. For Harry, staying silent wasn't neutrality. It was surrender. The media was never going to leave him alone. The firm was never going to step in and protect him. And for Meghan, the abuse, the racism, the relentless scrutiny, it didn't end with a move across the Atlantic. It followed them. It stalked them. So when people act like speaking out was some kind of revenge tour, they're missing the point entirely. It wasn't revenge, it was release. A deep exhale after years of being voiceless in a machine designed to chew you up and spit you out the moment you step out of line. But then came the most haunting part of that exchange. The moment where James O'Brien brought up the allegation from Harry's memoir that William physically attacked him. The caller scoffed. She shrugged it off as if it were a petty sibling squabble, a private matter that should have stayed buried in the royal vault. And James, with the calm of someone holding a mirror to someone's hypocrisy, asked the question, "You don't think an adult victim of domestic assault should go public with the allegation?" Silence. And that silence was deafening, because that's when the mask slipped. That's when it became clear that this wasn't about privacy or loyalty. It was about power. About keeping the narrative sanitized, about protecting an image even if it means covering up harm. Imagine the double standards. If Harry were a woman, if William weren't heir to the throne, would we so casually dismiss an account of physical violence within the family? Of course not. But in the monarchy, appearances matter more than people. The crown weighs heavier than the truth. And Harry? He chose the truth. Even if it meant breaking the illusion people clung to so tightly. And now, we get to the most insidious part of that caller's rant, the part that really reveals just how deep the entitlement runs. The idea that the UK invested in Harry and Meghan and therefore had a right to dictate where they live, how they live, and how quiet they stay. What is that if not a form of ownership? What is that if not colonial logic dressed in royal fandom? Let's break it down, shall we? When people say investment, they're not talking about love. They're not talking about support. They're talking about emotional stock in the fantasy of the monarchy. They're talking about the taxpayer pennies spent on royal weddings or security, as if that suddenly entitles them to control someone's existence. It's grotesque, it's manipulative, and it completely ignores the reality that what the UK gave Harry and Meghan in investment, they paid back tenfold in public service, visibility, and grace under pressure. Meghan showed up, did the engagements, wore the neutral tones, smiled through the lies, and still it was never enough. Let's not forget what kind of investment the press made in Meghan. Headlines that called her straight outta Compton, questioned the exotic genes she was bringing to the royal line, and portrayed her as the scheming, attention-hungry villain while praising Kate for doing the exact same things. That's not investment. That's aggression. That's institutional cruelty. And when Meghan dared to say, "I'm not okay," instead of help, she got headlines calling her dramatic. Instead of protection, she got silence. So when she and Harry said, "We're leaving," the outrage wasn't about losing a royal couple. It was about losing scapegoats. Losing the people the media could kick to distract from the real cracks in the monarchy's foundation. And let's not pretend they bolted. That word, bolted, is meant to evoke cowardice. It's meant to paint them as selfish. But the truth? They didn't run. They chose to live. They chose to raise their children in a home that wasn't haunted by the ghost of Princess Diana's final days. They chose therapy. They chose nature. They chose each other. And honestly, it is killing some people that Harry and Meghan didn't just survive outside the palace. They're thriving. They've built a life rooted in freedom, creativity, and truth. And that truth, it's more powerful than 1,000 royal titles. It's more lasting than any media smear. And it's a reminder that dignity can't be stripped by a crown or restored by a tabloid. So to that caller, And to everyone who shares her mindset, let me say this clearly. Harry and Meghan don't owe you their silence. They don't owe you their trauma wrapped in a pretty bow. They don't owe you their location, their loyalty, or their pain. What they gave, public service, family milestones, openness, was a gift. And like any gift, it could be taken back when it was no longer safe to give. And what they found in Montecito wasn't exile, it was rebirth. Harry became the man his mother raised him to be, protective, honest, emotionally intelligent. And Meghan? She's thriving not because she escaped the monarchy, but because she never needed it to define her. This isn't a betrayal story, it's a liberation story, it's a love story, and it's a warning to institutions everywhere. If you try to dim someone's light for too long, one day they'll stop waiting for your permission and shine anyway.